joining me today on another episode of Marketing Wins. I'm really excited to have my friend Dorothy here with us today. She's just a smart woman. I've learned a lot from following her over the years and also just being with her in person at some live events and hearing her speak on her subject matter. So I just know you're going to learn a lot from her about content and paid ads and funnels and how to make your products and your content really work better for you. So Dorothy, thanks so much for being here today.
Thanks for having me. I'm so excited.
Yeah. So before we dive too far in, I know you've got a couple of businesses kind of running in tandem here. Why don't you tell folks a little bit about each of those like main focuses that you have?
Absolutely. So I have my agency, Needle's Eye Media, which is a business I started in 2017, really as a freelancer. So I started running paid ads. Originally, it was just Facebook ads at the time for businesses, and did that on my own, freelancing for about 2.5 years, and then started growing a team, and it morphed into the agency that we are today. So we really focus on helping digital product sellers to scale with paid ads. And so, we do a lot of, webinar funnels, like really, one of our biggest focus is helping people shift from the cycle of live launches into evergreen funnels and being able to sell their products all the time. So that is my agency. And then more recently, about 1.5 years ago, I started a digital media company called The Gig. And really our mission is to help freelancers to go beyond the 9 to 5 and to grow businesses that give them more freedom, more flexibility, greater income potential, all of those things, which was really, my story, right? Kind of going from, working in a, traditional job to freelancing and running my business.
Yeah, that's great. I love that. And now when you're talking like live launches versus evergreen funnels, what is the biggest thing that seems to hold people back from even like breaking away from the live launch approach?
Yeah, I think it's fear, really is what I see so often, because, when you learn how to sell your products in, a certain way, that's what it's what you're comfortable with. And,
Yeah.
I think the idea of, going to something so drastically different, it creates a lot of fear for people.
Yeah.
If the doors are open to my product all the time, are people still gonna buy? Is the removal or the idea that there is this removal of scarcity, is that going to make it not work? And there's ways that we can build scarcity into evergreen funnels. So a lot of these are just kind of limiting beliefs about like what what it looks like to make that type of shift.
Yeah.
And so, if your business is built around, okay, I launch once a quarter, 4 times a year, I open up the doors for 3 weeks, and I'm, doing this really intensive, promotion period, and then cart open. And, it's really scary to entertain the idea of doing something that is so different. So I think it's really fear that holds people back.
And then when you think about building something evergreen, like what are the foundational steps that you think really helps somebody up for success if they're going to go after this more evergreen model for promoting and it's all digital products, correct, that you're promoting?
Yes, it is. So, a lot of online courses, and most of them, ascending people into kind of higher ticket programs on the back end. So,
Sure.
whether that's coaching or masterminds or, other things that you sell as well. But, first, I think it's helpful to just kind of define evergreen and like really what we mean by this.
Yeah.
And really what evergreen means is it is a funnel where you can sell your products any day of the year, any hour of the day. People can purchase from you.
Yeah.
And it's very different from this idea of a live launch where again you're kind of promoting in a very short time window, and in between then people might be able to join a wait list or whatever it might be, but they can't actually join your program. And so with moving to Evergreen, there are pros, there are also certainly some cons. I
Mm,
think one of the things, other than, just kind of fear of the unknown, another thing that really holds people back from going Evergreen is if there's a big, kind of live component to the way that they execute on their program. So often it means, some structural shifts in kind of what the offer looks like as well.
yeah.
And there are certainly like ways to, say you have a, 6-week live program that you take people through, maybe an evergreen funnel, they're getting access to these live calls for 6 weeks after purchasing, right? But they can still start at any time. So, often there's structural changes that, need to be made to the offer. So that's really kind of the first place to start, is to think about what your offer actually looks like now. And, if you kind of had to force yourself to say like, all right, what would it require to allow people to start, with you at any time? And what changes would you need to make? So that's really the first thing, is, thinking through that piece of things, logistically. And
Yeah.
then from there, it's really about like, okay, so how do you sell effectively, outside of this kind of launch environment? And for our clients, I really do believe that, webinars are still an incredibly powerful way um, to create this type of funnel. And I think there's so many trends in digital marketing.
Yeah.
Different things become popular. It's almost kind of cyclical, like,
Right.
and I think what is very powerful about a webinar is that it allows you to really kind of replicate the accelerated relationship building that happens during a typical launch, right? So like often for a launch, what it looks like for, a lot of our clients, where they kind of came from is, they're sending people into, something like a 5-day masterclass, whether that's free or low ticket, and they're, teaching, they're delivering value over the course of, 2 days, 3 days, 5 days, and then they're pitching their program, kind of
Yeah.
in the middle to the end of that. And so what's very cool about, a webinar is it allows you to really deliver value, to teach, to build that, know, like, and trust factor over the course of, 60, 90 minutes. And then, make people an offer, and, allow them to, to step in, from there. And, I think one of the biggest objections is, scarcity. How do you create scarcity with an evergreen funnel? And most of our clients use a tool called Deadline Funnel, which allows you to create a individualized timer for every person who attends the webinar. So, like,
Yeah.
say for example, your cart is open for 3 days after someone attends the webinar.
Yeah.
Each individual person, like whenever they watch, they're going to get their own individual 3-day timer, which at the end of which, either they're no longer able to buy, or they're no longer able to buy at the price that was promoted
Right.
on the webinar. So to answer your question of kind of what it looks like to really kind of go through this process and get here is, typically it's doing a series of live webinars to really test and hone this marketing message. And
Yeah.
then once you hit on a live webinar that is converting at the rate that you need to convert at to, really work, in terms of the math of how all the
Yeah.
numbers play together, then that is the recording that you then take and go turn evergreen and continue driving traffic to, but no longer need to actually do that presentation live.
Wow. That's great. And what would you say to people who are just like, they're nervous about doing a webinar? Like, do you ever have people come to you and they're like, I just don't think I would be good running a webinar. I've had bad experiences myself with webinars. Like, what's been your experience just from the psychological side of like getting somebody to understand or be comfortable in that environment?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's very valid because, certainly if you're anxious, if you're really nervous, that comes across,
Yeah.
in kind of the way that you are selling, the way that you're, teaching and really executing in the webinar, and people can feel that, right? So
Yeah.
if they feel like you're not confident, then that creates that doubt in, in the program, in what you're selling and you. And so, I think it's really important, just like in all things in business, to really do the self work and, work on yourself as hard as you're working on the business. And so if, kind of confidence on video is a challenge for you, then, starting to put out content, even if it feels really scary, putting out video content on your organic social media and really building that muscle is the first place to start. And then from there, it's really just about practice. So for some of our clients, it takes 2 or 3 attempts at a webinar to get a
Yeah.
recording that's ready to go evergreen. For other clients, it might take 10, 15, like it really is going to be variable depending on kind of how familiar you are with kind of that format of selling, and then
Mhm.
how kind of comfortable and confident you are with with showing up in that way.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, it's interesting just to think through because there is so much psychology that goes into like how people show up in a selling process, and that just has to be so important, especially if you're going to make something that's then used over and over and over again.
Yeah.
So, do people ever use like do you find it more effective for people to use the word webinar, or are you having seen people use like different terms for the same concept?
Yeah. So, I mean, so we call them webinars like internally, but in
Yeah.
terms of like what you're actually presenting it as, like usually it's something like masterclass or, even just like free training. But I would say masterclass is
It's
typically the best
the new
verbiage.
trendy word right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
The one where people feel comfortable. Because yeah, I've got a lot of people, honestly more on the corporate side that are trying to do webinars and they're still calling them webinars and hitting roadblocks. So I might have to say, hey, maybe we call this a masterclass.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, that's great. Now, as far as like, how do people know they are ready for putting out an evergreen program? Like, let's say they've got like an idea. Do you find it helpful for when clients work with you guys to have like certain things in place for it to be effective, to have an evergreen sales model? Or do you guys ever work with people that are just starting from the very beginning with a digital product? Or do you like to see like some sort of proven sales record or track record with the product?
Yeah, that's a great question. And, I think it's almost best to address that kind of more broadly in terms of paid ads in general, because,
Mm,
I think often people jump into advertising too soon,
yeah.
which really it's this question of like, what do you have more of? Do you have more time or do you have more resources and money, right?
Mm,
Um, because if you are in a position where um you're going to launch a funnel and you have $5,000 or whatever it is to invest, and that's what you have, it's like that can evaporate very quickly if
right.
your first 3, 4, 5 webinars don't get to the conversion that you need them to get to. And so I think that it rarely makes sense to kind of jump into paid ads with an unproven offer.
Right.
It's much better if you can validate and, kind of prove out your offer with your, warm market first, prove it out organically, make sure that that people want this, that, this is something that is selling. And I think live launches are often a great way to do that effectively. And so, in order to kind of move into more of an evergreen model, and especially do so with paid ads, it really does require that you're at a place with your product where you know your market, you know your audience, you
Mhm.
know what they care about, why they're purchasing your product, why they might not purchase your product. That you really understand all of that going in.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you certainly